Hey everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to Vampire Starting Rosters. We have looked at all of the teams available in the Blood Bowl 2020 rulebook. We've looked at starting rosters, we've looked at star players. We've covered most of them for tournaments as well, but not these teams yet because they landed in the Teams of Legend PDF. So we are going to have a look at just what you can run if you want to take these guys at a tournament, and also it will give you a guide as to what to expect if you face this team as well across the pitch. So we're going to look at some 1100 TV rosters and some 1200 TV rosters. The reason for that is most tournaments as we go into next year are going to be 1100, 1150, 1200, 1250. So this should give you some good archetypes for expectations, but also so that if you want to run one of them, actually you can tweak it up or down 50k and get it to just how you want it to be. Anyway, let's have a look at some Vampire tournament rosters. And the best roster for vampires at tournament is to not run them and take this undead roster at 1100. Sorry, I couldn't resist. So vampires, they got hurt in this edition. We covered that in the starting roster build video and also in our breakdown of the FAQ. So basically these guys have got animal savagery, which means they are doing blocking and blitzing on a 2+. Anything else is on a 4+. If they fail and there's a friendly player close to them, they knock them down, roll for armor, etc. If there's no friendly player, then they lose their tackle zones, really stupid style. So vampires got hurt badly, and we were hoping when the FAQ landed it would be that Hypnogaze gives them the out. That is not the case, so they are basically suffering from the worst of all of the negatraits, essentially. It's like wild animal, but they lose their tackle zone. So really, really tough gig for the Vamps. So we are going to go into this assuming that you are considering taking Pro for a Vampire. So Pro now works on a 3+. So say you want to move with a Vampire, you roll for Animal Savagery, you need a 4+ to succeed. You don't get a 4+, then you can say I'm going to use Pro to re-roll that. That gives you a 3+ chance to get that 4+ again. Now, it's not perfect, but that will put you in good stead. And the other thing that actually helps with vampires a little bit is where the reroll rule is now changed. So you can only reroll a dice once, but you can use any amount of team rerolls in one turn now. So if you were to really make a play, you really need this vampire to do something, you can take the animal savagery, go for the Pro. If you fail the Pro, you can use a team reroll to reroll the Pro roll, which will then give you the reroll on animal for savagery. It's expensive, but actually it means that if multiple vampires fail during one turn, you can use multiple team rerolls to support them doing their actions. So that is going to be really, really useful. Now, as we go into these vampire lists, we are going to basically I'm just going to expect you to run Pro or suffer the wrath. So we're going to start off with 1100 vanilla. Okay, we're going to go 4, 5, 11. This comes in at 1070. So 4 vampires, 5 rerolls, 11 players total. Skills we've identified for vampires: Pro. Block, dodge, sidestepper, also quite good. Thralls, kick and block, you just want to make them useful. It's a really tough team, and with 4 vampires, with 5 rerolls, if all 4 of them have Pro, now this is a tier 2 team, so you should get a reasonable amount of skills. You should be able to hook your vampires up with enough skills to give them all Pro. Benefit of that is if you don't need to use Pro, then whatever you are doing with that vampire, you will be able to use Pro to just make it better. So if you don't have pass and this guy's making a pass action, you've got Pro to make sure he takes the opportunity to get that pass. You've got 5 rerolls in the bank to make that happen. If he doesn't need Pro, so he passes animal savagery, you've then got Pro that you can use for that pass, for that block, whatever you want. So he's just going to be better. So it's really interesting. I think vampires are better in tournaments because you can immediately give them Pro. And when they've got Pro, then actually you've got a reasonably good chance of making the most of their stat line, because vampires are actual tanks. Movement 6, strength 4, agility 2+, passing 3+. They are really good players. They've got Hypno Gaze as well, which is going to come in handy. Giving Pro just means they're actually going to get a chance to do that. Now, 1100, this gives you 4 Strength 4 players, and those 4 Strength 4 players have all got Agility 2+. Gives you 11 players total and 5 rerolls. So, if you're going to play Vampires, this is probably the best you are going to get, especially at 1100. Now, let's ramp it up to 1200. You get 5, 5, 12 for 1180. 5 Vampires, 7 Thralls, 12 players total, and 5 rerolls, so you just up the Vamp. Again, pro on these Vampires. If you are a savage, you can absolutely just ignore Pro, go for block, and just hope you roll well. In fact, there is a reasonable tactic here to gear up some of your Vampires to murder stuff, so block, Mighty Blow, and just have them on the line and just have them be the savages that they kind of want to be. Just allow them to do Vampire things. Maybe 3 would be the max. Then you still got 2 Vamps that you can use your rerolls and maybe even Pro on them to use that Agility 2+ and Strength 4 to run around, take your blitzes, take your quick passes and handoffs to actually do really cool stuff. But if you don't have the skills, beware, because Vampires without Pro are going to be costly to your team. Whether it is a case of actually them eating stuff or just wandering, well, they don't wander off anymore, which is nice, just looking at the sky and doing nothing at all. Because when you lose a player on the pitch, tackle zones start to open and your resilience here on this team is not great. Alright, now we're getting into the exciting builds. So, Vampire teams have Sylvanian Spotlight, which gives them some star players that you're going to be interested in taking. So, in this roster, we've got Wilhelm 1200, comes in at 1190, so you can sneak an assistant coach in there. You get 4 Vampires, 7 Thralls, and 7 rerolls. Again, Pro on the Vampires will make those rerolls worthwhile. Any spare rerolls you've got actually are better now because you can stack them in a turn. And on top of that, you get Wilhelm Cheney. So Wilhelm Cheney is one of the best star players in the game, hands down. Movement 8, Strength 4, Agility 3+, Frenzy, Claws, Catch. This guy is awesome. And basically what this will give you is 4 Vamps on your front line. Realistically, you could go with 3 and use 1 to make the most of that Agility 2+ and Passing 3+ to be your ball picker-upper, and then deliver it to Wilhelm Cheney. This gives you a kind of dink and dunk offense where you've got 3 decent bruisers on the front line. Now, Vampires, Strength 4 is really good, their armor's good, and regeneration is really good. So they will be able to punch and they will be able to take a punch, which is really cool. So 2 or 3 of those on the line with your Thralls, and then you've got 1 or 2 Vampires in the backfield to collect the ball and feed it to Wilhelm Cheney. Alternatively, use 1 Vamp with Wilhelm as a safety in the backfield and deploy those Vampires up and just try and dominate that front line. There's actually a lot of potential with this roster, and giving Wilhelm Cheney, where he does not have the nega trait except Loner 4+, is really going to be beneficial. And the fact you can stack rerolls now, and this one's got 4 rerolls in this roster, means that actually that Loner is kind of less bad as well, because you're going to be using Pro on the Vampires and you're going to have to stack it well, so you're going to have to choose what you want to do in the order, and you are going to have to take it sometimes when you fail that roll, because rerolls here you're kind of running with not a lot. But this 4 Strength 4 players who are all Agility 2+, yes, they have anger issues, but that's still quite potent, backed up with 7 Thralls and, like I said, one of the top 5 star players in the game with Wilhelm Cheney. This roster is going to win games. I'm not thinking, you know, like it's going to go 5-1 at a tournament, but it could very well go 3-3. And that is quite impressive for a team as ransacked as the Vampires. And it wouldn't be one of our team lists without Grak and Crumbleberry. So we've got the Grak 1200 build here coming in at 1180. The star player, Grak and Fangleberry. Here we go. So we've got Grak and his little sidekick, backed up with 3 Vampires, 8 Thralls, 4 rerolls. So that's 13 players total. The benefit of this side is you've still got the 3 Vamps. Still recommend Pro on those guys. Strength 4 big guys. That they're going to do some work. 8 Thralls. Thralls are not bad as far as linemen go, but you've got that 4 reroll reserve. On top of that, you have got an Ogre. And this Ogre comes with somebody with Agility 3+ and Sure Hands. So this is a really interesting scenario. Normally you run Grak and Crumbleberry as like a big guy that just comes with a reserve ball carrier. Crumbleberry, I've read it off the screen, Fangleberry can actually be your primary ball carrier in this roster. You've got Grak, who quite frankly you can just deploy him on the line. I probably wouldn't. I'd probably use him as a linebacker because he is kind of slightly more reliable than the vampires. Actually, it's exactly the same. Maybe a little bit worse because you can use rerolls. Alright, fine. But he is Strength 5 Mighty Blow. So you're going to end up with 3 Strength 4 dudes, 1 Strength 5 dude with Mighty Blow, Sure Hands bound in there. And because this is tier 2, you're going to end up with, what, 4 to 6 skills? That's 3 pro on the vampires. You can then either stack if the rules allow it, or go kick on a thrall, sure hands on another, block on another. I don't know, you can do some stuff there. You can actually end up with skills. You can end up with 1 or 2 ball carriers, including the tiny little halfling guy, who, while being strength 2, gives you that sure hands of a 3+. This roster is pretty decent. It does not have the offensive potential that the last roster does, but this has got more strength, and it's just really quite interesting. Trying to explain why a halfling would join a vampire team, however, is probably a bit beyond me. However, what it does mean is if you can find a little vampire mono and some kind of ogre with like vampire miniature, you could scratch build a really cool vampire team here. 3 vamps is going to keep it reasonably consistent as well. Again, this one will win some games. And it had to be done. We have got the horror trio here at TV 1200. So 1.2 million build. This one comes in 20k underneath that at 1180. So you get 1 vampire and 10 thralls. 3 rerolls. 1 vampire, give it pro, it's doing stuff. You got strength 4, you got agility 2+, you got pass 3+, you got a bunch of linemen. But then it gets really interesting because you get the vampire. Then you get Frankenstein, the golem, the flesh golem, Frankenstein itself, and then the werewolf in Wilhelm Cheney. So this roster is a little less powerful than the others, and it will be a little less consistent. What it does give you is some awesome modeling opportunities, and then you can just go classic black and white horror king level here. So 1 vampire is going to be your maneuver guy, okay? You're going to have to lean on it to do stuff, but it makes a reasonably good blitzer. 2+ to blitz most of the time, and if you give it pro, then you get 3+ to re-roll that one, or just to re-roll one of your dice when you are punching things. That is quite useful. On top of that, you get Frankenstein, who is a strength 5 brawler. Okay, he's got break tackle on a 2+, which means he is going to be able to get out dodge when he needs to, but quite frankly, just that strength 5 and the resilience of stand firm and regenerate and armor 9+, 10+, whatever it is just going to keep him in really good stead. And you run Wilhelm Cheney, who I've already gushed about in this video, but movement 8, strength 4. You've got 3 great blitzers here. Frank really needs to be your headlineman, okay? You need to build your offense around him. And then you've got the vampire to do vampire things, you've got Wilhelm Cheney to do Wilhelm Cheney things, and you've just got 10 muggles on the pitch that you can just send off to die, or quite frankly, they don't make terrible ball handlers either. And you still got 3 rerolls to do stuff. It's a really interesting build. I know that there are going to be some people that are brewing this up, that are planning for this, that are waiting for this, because we saw a couple of these in tournaments last year in the 2016 format. So it's something that there is an appetite for, and just as an homage to you guys, I wanted to make sure that we got this roster in the video because it is actually quite interesting, even if it's not the best. And last of all, I had to touch on this one before we wrapped up. So this is the Pro Fang League build. So this one also comes in at 1180. Let me just do the maths there. Yeah, it does. Okay, so we've got 6 vampires, 6 thralls, 4 rerolls. So there's little asterisks on there because you can drop a vampire down to 5 and take a thrall and a reroll. And you kind of end up with one of the first builds we looked at. So, pro. This roster should only be taken really in a league, not league, in a tournament where you're allowed 6 skills. So that you can give vampires pro. What you end up with is 6 strength 4 warriors. Okay, it is a poor man's Black Orc team, but instead of goblins you've got thralls. This is high risk, high reward. If you love just running on hot dice, however, with pro and 4 rerolls, you get a little bit of opportunity to make those dice as hot as you want them to be. This will be quite entertaining. This will be a challenge. This will not be the most winningest of lists, but it will be satisfying when you pull it off. This is as close to a stunty roster as you can get while having something decent on your roster. Amusingly, I think the Thrall is the best player on this roster, but the potential there of 6 vampires doing 6 vampire things is huge. I don't know why you would run this roster, because there's actually better rosters, but if you want to go all vamps all the time, Pro Fang League roster will be for you. Anyway guys, I'm going to wrap up this interesting video about vampires and how they got punched in the face, because there's actually some stuff you can do with them. I do expect to see vampires in tournaments, and I think they're going to be taken by vampire coaches of old, people who've backed the Punga Kickstarter and want to take their models to the pitch, and they should because they're lovely, and people who like a tier 2 challenge. We've seen this a lot with Khemri coaches, we've seen it with Slan coaches. The vampire roster here hurts. But if you can eke out wins, it is going to be so satisfying. Imagine going to a 2-day tournament and pulling off 4 or 5 wins with vampires. You will be heralded a sparkly skinned genius. Anyway, I will wrap up. Let me know in the comments what you think of vampires in tournaments and if you're ever going to see any. And I will be back again soon with more Blood Bowl content. Thanks for watching, guys. Toodaloo.